All right, Zaven. Let's wait till this siren goes by because we're in Brooklyn.
It's very authentic.
Very authentic. Perfect start to this conversation.
Yeah.
You know, this is
we should
real.
be sounding the alarms, honestly.
It's
a theme.
That is a theme. Okay, so I've never done this before. This is not a podcast per se. It doesn't have a name to it. But, you know, I like to release different thoughts and things like that. And today I want to talk about Spotify, right? And so the main reason why I brought you specifically, for one, you're my friend. I feel like we can do mental gymnastics and sparring together. Mm-hmm. We've done a little bit of it just on the fly. And also, I feel like you're very, you're kind of like an outspoken person who has a strong opinions and also kind of doesn't give a fuck what people think. And I'm kind of like the opposite of that. Like I kind of give a fuck what people think, and I have a lot of thoughts, and also I'm not as outspoken on certain topics. And so I thought this would be a good chance to, like, you know, pull some of these things out of me for my thoughts, like in a platform where you also can speak for so many musicians out there who are kind of against.
Unofficially, I'm not.
No, you're the spokesperson.
I'm the spokesperson.
Zaven is the poster child for anti-Spotify.
for all artists, for
all musicians.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
Okay, so where do we begin?
That's a good question. I mean, do you have an idea, or because I can go.
You know what? Just go. Start going, and then we'll start riffing off.
All right. The music industry. Let's start. Well, okay. So I think honestly, the best way to contextualize this for me is to zoom out and look back at how we got here in the first place. Because I'm of the opinion that I won't say we lost the war, but we certainly lost a lot of battles as artists our positioning inside of the music industry. Like, you know, I think a long time ago, you know, starting since probably the beginning of, you know, when vinyl was actually, like, when wax was actually wax. Did you know that?
Yeah.
You know, it used to be just like a spindle of wax, and that's what, you know, and they just etched, the sound was etched to the side. Like, you know, like musicians have been giving away their rights to their music forever and not understanding the consequences of that forever. You know, I can't remember. It's like Little Richard gave Tutti Frutti away for like $5 or something like that. It's like crazy. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah. So
we've been in this situation for a very long time, and it almost feels like we've never course corrected that.
Like ever.
And in comparison, you know, I'm not saying things are ideal in the other arts, but it, you know, the fact that we just had like a big strike in the movie industry or anything like that, like they're set up in a way where they're more able to leverage their position than it seems we are as musicians. And I think that, you know, business is just being business, if we want to say, you know, like, you know, this isn't malicious necessarily, but they're making sure they're getting what they need, but we aren't necessarily getting what we need.
I see.
Yeah.
Now, something that I find interesting from my perspective is, so as time has gone on, as you're saying, we've seen the shift. So, like, let's take it from every time there's like a major change from, like, okay, you know, CDs come out and now everyone's like, okay, vinyl's gonna die, this true art form. Then, or the cassettes, whatever, before that. Then CDs, then MP3s, then Napster, right? Like, all of us who are talking about anti-Spotify also probably use Napster. We'll talk about that later. you know?
Fair.
Okay, so there's a shift happening that is like the only constant is change, right? So to me, I'm saying, like, okay, once the MP3 became a thing and the CDs were kind of like a dying thing, it was going to be inevitable that CDs were going to be gone.
Yeah.
Right? So my thing is, in a kind of like Buddhist philosophy type way, is like realizing that the change is there and figuring out how is it that I personally can navigate that, because there's nothing I can do to go against the current. So, and I don't mean that in some kind of like dark, abysmal way or anything like that, but like for me, if I was anti Spotify and I didn't want my music on there, then I would take my music off there. I wouldn't put it on there, and then I would have to try to sell physical units, which goes against what people are doing. People aren't buying that anymore. So like, I'd be trying to go against the grain, which makes the music industry even harder.
Right.
So my whole thing is like, how do you take this thing that is seemingly horrible, and it is in a lot of ways, and make it work for you like we've always had to do?
Yeah, well, so I do want to make a distinction because I feel like it's the same way like people say Kleenex instead of toilet tissue or whatever, tissues. Spotify is not streaming. It is one entity within streaming, right? So I'm not anti-stream. Right. I'm not wholesale against any of the tools that ultimately I would say are exposure tools, right? Like that allow you to be seen by a larger audience. I'm not anti that.
Right.
But I do think within that, some people offer better deals, like, even Tidal versus Spotify, But beyond that, I think that from what I can tell, YouTube has a much better deal overall for the artist than Spotify does.
I'm glad you... Okay, sorry to interrupt. Sorry to bring up YouTube, but that's a really interesting point for me. It's like no one ever really talks about YouTube. Everyone says that YouTube has a great thing, but that's after you break into the point of monetization.
True.
Which means that all of your shit is being played for free. Everything, your video content, it's all being there for free, and you're not even tapping into one penny of it until you reach certain amount. Which I know that like there's been an uproar recently with Spotify of like, if you don't hit 1,000 plays on your song, they don't pay you. You know what? Like, I understand people getting upset, but YouTube, they will play your stuff for years and years and years, and if you don't get 40,000 watch hours within a 365-day period, then you won't even become eligible for monetization.
True. Yeah, and well, so it's interesting. Like there is like the psychological piece of like people getting comfortable within a paradigm, and so they accept that from YouTube because it's been that way forever or whatever.
Right.
Versus Spotify, although I think some of the moves, like again, not to equivocate, because I think the way YouTube has navigated that from a policy standpoint has been much smoother than what Spotify is doing. Where kind of, honestly, from my perspective, I think they're kind of scrambling. Let's start with they're broke. They broke as hell.
Okay.
Which is why they're raising prices. Which is why and they're making questionable decisions behind the scenes, and they don't have the transparency. Maybe I can understand from a business model. There's some reasons you may not want to have total transparency, like to maintain your edge, but there's a lot of side eye in terms of how they're distributing their money. They basically gave Joe Rogan all of our money. You know what I mean? Like ultimate, like I understand why from a business perspective that was a bet they wanted to make, but they just said like, well, we're going to take all this money and just give it to this one guy, as opposed to trying to evenly distribute it, or even distribute it amongst the top earners or people at a threshold. Even they didn't make that choice,
or even give him the same deal as everyone else, where it's like, sure, have your podcast, but then your streams will get 0.00001 per play.
Right.
I see that.
Yeah,
I understand that. Okay, we're here to play devil's advocate.
Yes.
By the way, I'm gonna go ahead and say this to my camera there, that like I just have my thoughts. I hope that no one hates me at the end of this. Like I am a musician who is a working artist also. Like, yeah, I stay out of the Facebook comments every time they talk about Spotify. I can't get into this because I like Spotify, but we'll get more into that later. But so with everything that you said, I want you to tell me, okay, obviously everyone can agree that you can't really fight against the overall shift of how things are going. Like, we're not going to bring CDs back. I don't even have a CD player, right?
Yeah.
So in the scope of that, as an artist, what's the matter with just being like, oh, if you want to have yourself on Spotify, have it there, and if you don't, take it off and leave it at that? Why not leave it at that?
Well, okay, let me also be clear, because I think this also has to do with goals, right? I want to be clear. Everyone has the right to be super famous and be broke if they want to. Like everyone can choose that. If that's how you want to manage your career, go ahead. You know what I'm saying? It's not. I think that overall, it is my personal opinion that we are too thirsty for fame and will sacrifice our own financial stability far too often.
Okay.
And if enough of us are doing that, then that's part of why they're able to do it. Is because they know that there's always some hungry kid who will sell themselves away, not even sell themselves for free, will give everything to allow their machine to run just so that they can be in a position to be seen
and reach through the algorithm and stuff like that.
Right, exactly. And you can argue that, you know, they did create the infrastructure and the platforms to allow you to be seen. Again, I argue, like with Spotify, it's like they're not all equal. I think that YouTube seems to have a much fairer algorithm. It's much easier to get exposure in comparison to Spotify, which still seems a little, I won't say payola, but, you know, like getting exposure on Spotify is not, it's not like it's a fair.
Okay, now here's where, when people ask me about Spotify, I'm going to take one moment to just tell you why I personally, in my own bubble, am pro Spotify.
Please.
Okay? And by the way, this doesn't mean that I think that the business practices are fair. It doesn't mean anything like that. I'm saying for my use, okay? So, for me, personally, Jonathan LaRue Scales.
Okay, all right, full government, all right.
My middle name means the street in French.
Yeah,
I don't think my parents knew that. Yeah, so for me, like, okay, let's start from production, right? So I've been in the music industry as a touring artist for 17 years, okay? I remember the days of having a basement full of albums.
Yes.
Okay? So let's not even talk about storage. Let's not talk about money. Let's not talk about carbon footprint or anything like that. Let's not even go there, okay?
Right.
But just in terms of like how much I spent to even make these products, to then have to travel around, to then have to present them to actual people, who then have to like my band enough to be at the show, then they have to have money, and then they have to get this in order for me to get that $10 for the CD, right?
Sure.
Okay. Now, although I'm not seeing the immediate payoff for like, this is the product that I made, I'm putting it to you, blah blah, what I am seeing is that through this platform people are like kind of binging and becoming super fans, so that when I tour, those are the people that are coming to the show. So sure, this listener, I may have made 0.003 cents from them from their 1,000 streams,
right?
But they are, not only are they buying a ticket, but they're bringing their friends who are buying tickets. Them and their friends are buying merchandise. Them and their friends are telling their people, who are then going on Spotify, so I can get a couple more little 2 cents or whatever. But then they're coming, and so like for me, and then I go, and then with all the other free platforms like Instagram, who kind of is doing the same thing in a different way, because they have their own stuff going on too. But like, you know, then hey, I release a new thing. Those same people who have been entrenched in my art because they've had access to it now can buy this new thing. Hey, I released a sheet music book. This person who knows the song so well from Spotify now can pay $25 for my music book, which I would have never made that $25 if they just bought the CD. You know what I mean? So like, that's whenever I like, you know, say that I'm pro Spotify, I'm coming from that place, and I'm coming from the place of, because of the algorithm exposure and like people who like this other band, they might listen to a record and then at the end of it might jump to mine and they get turned on to that. That's a lot more efficient than them just stumbling upon it on the radio. You know what I'm saying? And then to even get your song on the radio is like, oh my god. And I come from that grind time where I was like emailing radio DJs and stuff, you know what I'm saying? So like, when I say I'm pro Spotify, it's not that I'm happy with the money, but I'm saying for me, I figured out how to leverage it for me, And I've also acknowledged that if someone doesn't like it, hey, you know what? I don't want you to feel taken advantage of. You should pull yourself off of there, man. You should, like, that's just my outlook.
Yeah, well, no, it gets deep. And see, and because there's what works for us personally, but I also am zooming out because that's part of why I take the stand, because it's not only what works for me. I have to figure out what works for me. But yeah. I do think about the larger consequences of these entities existing. So, first I'll say this. I think that we have witnessed a shift where music has gone from being the product to now it is the marketing. It is no longer even the product. So you're getting, like, you know, again, fractions of pennies.
Yeah.
So in a way,
it's
I
the
guess,
business card.
Yeah.
Your album is the business card.
Right. It's not even where you're making your money anymore. So there's plenty of things you can say about that. I do think it also, there's a consequence, I think, about how it changes our art too overall. Like, what are people compelled to make, how they make them. I mean, this is always true. Like, it's kind of weird, it's kind of cyclical. Like, when going back all the way to vinyl again, it's like, you know, songs could only be like 2 minutes at first, right? Like, it was like you only had a certain amount of time because you were just gonna run out of fucking vinyl.
Yeah.
And then they figured out how to lengthen things, and then people made, you know, Pink Floyd made whatever, however many minute long songs. You know, we wouldn't have Fela Kuti records if they hadn't figured that out, right? But now it's come back around, and people are making short songs again to adapt to, you know, the parameters of technology and like what people seem to be focused on.
Right.
So not to get too convoluted, I think I'm also concerned about, like, are we getting the best music out of ourselves by conforming to this paradigm?
And I think, to me, there's a lot that you're saying there that needs to be unpacked. And I'm really into philosophy, right? So I think that you're a very well tapped into yourself person that you're thinking about that. I think that it's cool for people to think about that. You know what I'm saying? Because there are people who are making art for the algorithm.
Oh yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Which I'm not here to say that that's good or bad, but I'm saying that people are doing that. But when you become aware of it, it allows you to say, okay, what am I trying to say, and what do I genuinely want to put out? So, like, for me, for example, like, if you listen to my albums on Spotify or wherever, like, I know that, like, I'm making the music genuinely for what it is. Because, hey, let me tell you, if I was trying to make music to be catchy, I'm fucking up.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, if I wanted to be successful through my music reaching the most possible people, then I'm messing up by just doing my thing. But I've chosen to take what you say into account, and I don't let the algorithm or these platforms necessarily dictate how I present my art. So, like, for me, I would say that, like, that's one way where, like, I do stand with you on that, in conjunction with saying, you know what, from the Napster times, people after Napster and all that, people there was no coming back from that, really. And the fact that, and also if you think about how technology is and just how things happen like that over the scope of history, the fact that we even make fractions of pennies now is a come up. Not to mention that on a CD, right, you pay X amount of dollars for the production, and you're paying for all the stuff, right? To make that money back, sure, you can sell the physical units and blah, blah, blah to recoup. But something that no one talks about is an MP3 file or whatever is like an infinite resource. You know what I'm saying? So I wish they would pay us more because it's existing there, and you don't ever have to re-up it like I used to have to do when, we sold our first 1,000 CDs and I need to put in a new order, but now I don't have any money to even get the new order. So now there's people who aren't hearing my music because I don't have the funds to even do a new replication. You know?
Right. I think part of what bothers me, because I think, you know, the players are kind of invisible, so we talk about it only from our perspective.
Right.
But the reality is, like, people will say there's no money in music. Someone's making money in music. Like,
Yeah.
you know, and it's a smaller group of people compared to the number of people who are supplying the goods that allow that money to be made.
Right.
So you know, that's part of what it's like. Yes, you can say like if we're talking about like the ease of use or how technology has made it better, we can have that discussion. I think we're gonna have to talk about AI at some point in this conversation. Like, we can't avoid that.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's what's next, and we have to face these all new set of challenges. But again, that's where I'm like, wait a minute. Like, it is not a group of. It's not like, oh well, we're just lucky because from my perspective, it's like no. It was set up this way.
Right.
And why are we not entitled? Because I don't even feel like, I'm not greedy, man.
Right.
I'm not even trying to say I need to get rich off my music, but they're squeezing us so far, we don't have the money to actually sustainably oftentimes make the art that everyone's clamoring for. And, you know, bringing it back to Spotify, the CEO, did you hear this? He put out a statement saying like,
yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I know what you're talking about.
He said that, you know, the cost of making music is almost zero, and he's so out of touch that he actually thinks that's true.
Right. I saw that.
You know?
And for my reaction to that, because, you know, I'm a strange person who processes the world in a different way. I saw that and I was like, yeah, he just doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. Now, I didn't take that any kind of way, because I know that, like, even the albums that I have on Spotify, I've spent thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars of my own money to put that music on there, right? And I hear him say that, and I'm just like, pfft, like, he obviously has no clue. Right? But I know, like I said, for me, I'm realizing how I've leveraged his, like, whatever know-how that he and his team have put together to create this thing that wasn't necessarily there before in that way. And then all the marketing that helped people to even know about it, I know that I have benefited from it. So it's hard for me to like down the impact of it. That is, you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I do. And Scales, before I say this, I want to remind you that you invited me to come talk about this.
Talk your shit.
So I'm sure, you know, occasionally you get a nice plate at Master's house too. You know what I'm saying? It's but you know slavery wasn't all bad.
Let me
see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but let me take what you said. Let me take what you said. All right. Yeah, the plate was good at Matt's house, right? But you know,
someone's gonna take that.
You don't have to.
By the way, I'm looking forward
and my
to
thing
that.
is, don't go in there. And then so you have other alternatives. So in this case, the alternative is you can do the old school way. There's people who still just do physical stuff.
Yes.
It is harder. That's the point. You know what I'm saying? But you don't have to do that.
Well,
and there's
from
lots
which
of
perspective,
and there's lots
though?
of, and also, okay, from the perspective of the artist.
Well, are we saying the old school way is CDs?
Any physical medium that you have to even get the money for to even produce yourself, and then have to physically take it around to places.
Okay, now, so this is this thing. I'm not advocating for physical, because the difference is direct to consumer,
right,
versus using one of these other platforms. So a lot of artists, including mainstream artists, have been advocating for direct to consumer, right? Because again, someone is making the money. You can still leverage the technology. You can still MP3s, streaming. There's always sort of ways for people to have access to your music that doesn't require us like traveling back in time.
You're right.
You know what I mean? So
right.
that's what we're really talking about. It's like, okay, there is a pie.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Someone is making that money.
Yeah.
We're just getting the crumbs off the side.
And to your point, well, this is funny, it's backwards. To your point, it would help if they just paid more money per play.
Yes.
but to my point, unfortunately, what you can say whatever you want to say about capitalism and all stuff like that. It is a game, and we as people who are trying to make money from our music have decided on our own to play the game. So here's something. I have a very unpopular
Okay, I gotta, but I just gotta preface this by saying, did we choose to play that game?
Yes.
Or were we thrusted in that game?
No, we chose it.
Well, wait, hold on. The capitalist game. This is
the music. We chose to play the music part of the game in the capitalist world because I could have been a.
But now we getting philosophical. Could you? Like, in theory, anyone could be anything. But if you know, like, I don't think Kobe Bryant. Okay, listen, Kobe Bryant could have been anything else. But he wouldn't have been Kobe Bryant probably. I can't say probably, but I think there's a good chance because his passion and his dedication for that specific thing made him Kobe Bryant. You understand? Like, he could have been Kobe Bryant doing taxes, but I doubt he would have been as passionate about that if he had not followed what was his singular goal of being the greatest basketball player. You see what I'm saying? So this is like a greater question of like,
it is a greater question.
What role does government play in like what our professions and how much we need to be supported in those professions? And I don't have the answer to those things, but I'm just gonna say I think it's debatable to say we chose it.
Okay, let me tell you why I'm coming from that angle. All right, now I have a very unpopular opinion about this. I'm sure that there might be some people are gonna chop it up and stuff like that. This is a very unpopular opinion. I'm gonna say it here for the cameras.
Say it, man.
Okay. And I don't say this shit like out in the streets. You know what I'm saying?
Oh shit.
I don't say this at gig. I don't say this nowhere.
Okay.
Right? Music is great, right? But it's not food, clothing, shelter.
Oh yeah, this is gonna be fun. All right,
okay?
Go ahead.
Listen. Like, I'm a musician and I make my complete living from music, right? Mm-hmm. And the reason why I work my ass off and the reason why I've been able to have the mentality to even get to where I am, I'm seeing for myself in this, is because I know that no one needs another song from me to live. Now this is where my philosophy starts, okay? Mm-hmm. Now, does my music add value to people's lives? Yes. I know this because people reach out, they say stuff, and it's really deep and very powerful, right? So I'm not saying that to say that it's useless or pointless or anything like that.
Sure.
But I am saying that when I'm faced with a situation like where like I've chosen to play this game, and which I'm gonna have to backtrack and really get deeper on that for a second. Mm-hmm. Let me just do that right now. Okay, so like,
do it.
My philosophy on this, which is also a very unpopular thought pattern. So people have been playing music since the beginning of time, right? Mm. People singing at the campfires, people banging on log drums from cavemen, you know what I mean? Singing, you know what I'm saying? From the beginning of time, right? I don't necessarily think that music, like the fact that we make money from music, I do think we're choosing to go down the route. And then the minute you want to make one penny, you've gone from music to music business.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Right? Mm-hmm. Now, once you go to music business, all that stuff about like they owe me this and this and that, it's kind of, to me, it's kind of off the table because like you're entering this world where like now you're negotiating your things. So for example, even with Spotify, your music, I don't think your music automatically just appears and materializes on Spotify. Someone has to put it there, right? And when you read the fine print and it says this is what you pay, you can say no. And in the grand scheme of how you want to put your music out there, then you got to fucking figure that shit out. Because this platform that all people are going to, and you know what? It's not the end all be all. But if you want to figure out your own thing and the whole direct consumer thing, I hate to use this guy for an example, but you know who does that shit really good? Fucking Kanye.
Yeah.
That direct to consumer stuff, like he will, and luckily he has his platform that he's created him from leveraging whatever he has. Mm-hmm. But then he releases a song, he says it's out, you go to his website, and that'll be the only thing on the website. So if you go to that website, that's the only thing that's there, and every dime of that goes straight to him. Now, yes. On different levels, we can do that too. Like you have Patreon, mm-hmm. I have Patreon. We're doing that. And I'm pretty sure that if me and you were hustling hard on our Patreons so hard, we wouldn't be sitting here. We'd be out just chilling because we would be good.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? We wouldn't even be thinking about, oh yeah, Spotify, they don't really pay shit, blah blah. in the same way that like some artists aren't. But I just believe that once you want to make one penny, you've crossed the threshold, and now it's a fucking fight.
All right, I'll tell you why I fundamentally disagree with you.
Okay, let's hear it.
First, I'll say Kanye is his business. He's good at business. He is one of the few people who's been able to buy his freedom. So again, I remind you invited me here. Yeah. But this is what I'm saying.
What do you mean by that?
What I mean is, it is a small group of people who start within that system.
This is
right. And then they outrun the machine, and now they have enough power and the platform in order to once again control their finances. That is not the vast majority of people within that system. It is literally, they're predatory loans. Like most music deals, and I'm not trying to, that's a whole nother thing, but like those deals, most people, it's who knows, like hot take, but like they're taking advantage of young people, and these people are getting these huge loans that they don't understand the mechanics of what they're doing, and then they spend the rest of their life broke, and worse than broke, in debt, deep in debt. And if they're lucky, they get a song that gets presented by the mainstream machine in order to maybe have enough of a platform in order to get out of it. So I bring that up because so again, bringing it back to the larger picture of what it means, what it signifies for us as a group. You can't look at Kanye or Oprah or Obama and say that everything's fine now, because some people will. I know that's not what you're arguing, but I am saying that it is such a small number of people who are in that position, and then we have to really look at how the vast majority of artists are suffering.
Okay, let's talk about that.
Okay. Because I haven't even told you why I fundamentally disagree with you yet. Okay, but we can stop here. Am I gonna remember? Okay, yeah.
You're gonna remember? Okay.
Yeah.
So the whole thing about like these few people have gotten to this place and the vast majority haven't. I mean, that's what it means to be a human being, because we're not supposed to be doing this shit. We're not supposed to, like, when we're designed, we're not supposed to be sitting here with microphones for cameras and millions of people are going to see that, or not, hopefully millions of people will see it, but like, that's not natural. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's, so like, we're going, even by existing as artists and us sitting here as professional musicians, like, now I'm not saying, like, when I say like we're already defying the odds by doing that, I'm not trying to play into your thing of saying we're eating off the master's plate. You know what I'm saying? But what I am saying is, like, once you cross that threshold to say, I want to make a living, I want to make a penny, I want to make a living from my art, you've crossed into another thing. Because guess what? There are so many people who play music greatly, who are happy, who also have other jobs, and they don't have that illusion that they need to be big or they need to...
Sure.
I think that we have run out of storage. But this is still going.
Yeah, it's a good combo.
This is still going, so I'm gonna let this rock.
Let's let it rock, bro.
Yeah, these
at this point, if they're in, they're in. You know what I mean?
Yeah, this is the one. That's the one. So at least that's there.
Okay, cool. Yeah, all right. So going back, this ties into why I fundamentally disagree with you. I might argue, first of all, I don't think that, like, I feel like music, art has been placed in this position where we consider it ancillary. Now, I'm not saying it is one for one in the hierarchy of needs, food, clothes, shelter. However, I would argue within this capitalist scheme and this whole society, art is what keeps the shit running.
I agree.
If we didn't have Netflix, if you didn't have your music to on your way to work, at the gym,
movies,
everything, all of the video games, all of these artists who are allowing people to be sane enough to continue the fight, to continue going to work, to continue doing these things that they dislike, and they're reminded through the beauty of art why life is beautiful, that I think is fundamental, and it is not like a side thing. And I would say furthermore that there is a difference between somebody who sings at the campfire versus somebody who studies for years and years, maybe goes to school and learns how to...
Let's talk about that then.
Let's talk about... Okay, but look, even if you don't go to school, if you just spent years and years studying to be an effective conveyor of storytelling, of the technical ability to sing or to play, to write songs. Like, those people are important. It's not just people playing kumbaya at the campfire.
But I'm not saying that those people are not important, but what I am saying, if you're a person, let's say you're an orator and you've like spent all these years to...
I'm saying they're essential workers, my friend, is what I'm saying.
You should ring the bell for them, like
Yes, ring the bells at sunset.
Ring the bells. Okay, so when I say what I said earlier about it's not food, clothing, shelter, I'm not saying, and I said this, I'm not saying that's not important, but what I am saying, let's say you're a person who has you've spent 20 years practicing guitar, and you make your own original beautiful music that moves people, right? Now, follow me for a second. That is adding value to the world. It's making people not kill themselves. It's helping people on their way to work. All that stuff, 100%, right? For one, that's valuable like that, right? But we want money and we want to live, right? There are also people who've taken the route of being like, I am an artist and I'm a starving artist and I'm putting my work out there and I'm penniless and blah, blah. No one wants to do that, right? Because we want to live our lives and do other things. So there's people who do that and are happy with that, and there's people like us who are trying to navigate it. So like what we do is we say, okay, I have this skill. What is the best way for me to leverage my skill in order for me to like more than just make a living, but like be comfortable, right? And I don't think that it's up to some system to make that decision for how we do that individually, because art is a very individualistic thing as it is, and I don't know that would be the answer if like it was like working at McDonald's or working at like as a lawyer, this or that, where you get this amount for this. I feel like I'm actually okay that it's difficult to do this.
Yeah, and to your point, I think it's a double-edged sword. There are countries, there are regions that do have something more like that, where the government subsidizes, or they know how many gigs you're doing a week, and they just send you a check because they know that you're an artist and art is important. And from what I understand, that's not all sugar
rainbows and
sugar
sunshine,
cubes and rainbows or whatever. Yeah, like I'm not saying it's perfect. However, I will say that one, I have a problem with the fact that there are specific people who leverage our willingness to do the art at all costs.
You're right.
You know what I'm saying? People are not doctoring just to doctor. You know what I mean? Or very few. There are holistic people. There are people who are like, I'm outside the system. I just love healing people.
Right.
But most people are doctoring because they're getting paid for the amount of hard labor that they're doing in order to provide that service in the world.
Right. You're saying there's people that are taking advantage of, which is why you don't like Spotify.
Right. I think yeah. All right, guys. See you later. Yeah, I think that's the problem.
Yeah, and this is why I feel like, to me, this is like a yin-yang situation. Because I'm going to say this, like, I didn't come here to win or lose or anything. I think that you're also right. And that is my point with this, is like, you're right. Also, I'm right because I know I'm right because I'm standing here having made a living from it on the same system that everyone else is on, and has it like, and you know what, I'm gonna say this, like, we both agree that like there is some type of pyramid where it's like, I believe if you want to be able to make a living comfortably with your art, it is hard. It is a hard road, and I'm okay with that because I feel like it's special, and music is a thing for everybody. And if you want to like get your shit together enough to be able to like have a sustainable living, it is fucking hard. And for me, I worked very hard to be able to figure that shit out, to the point where like people might look at me and on some level and say, okay, he did Tiny Desk, he did this, he played with this person, that person. Man, at the beginning of this shit, like straight out of college, like I have a degree in college, I worked at a factory for 5 years. You know what I'm saying? I also worked as a roofer, which was dangerous as fuck.
Yeah, I've had all sorts of
I also did all kinds of stuff because like I had this vision. And the reason why I'm able to sit here today and be like, oh yeah, make a living from music, is because I went through all that. And I feel like a lot of people are just saying, oh, I'm good at music. Like, where's the money?
Okay, so wait, now all right. So now this is a good point, but I wanna point a couple things out. I think that this also this goes into the illusion of the meritocracy. That is not to diminish all of your hard work.
Right.
But you are an exceptional person, whether you perceive it that way or not.
Why? Thank you.
You are unique and so this gets into whole like nature versus nurture. This gets deep. But again, it's like for whatever the reasons were, Kobe Bryant was Kobe Bryant. Now this is okay. I hope this analogy follows. But so I use this analogy actually pretty commonly because the difference, like I wish we had something like the NBA, because to me it's like, look, there's some people who are just happy being in the league. Right. And some of those people are bench warmers. Yeah. But they do their job, they do the work, and they're not famous or infamous, they're not legends, whatever, right. but they do their time in the league, mm-hmm. they provide the service, and some people's dream is just to be in the league. And mm-hmm. and at that level they are provided for their service, right? And then other people who are like admittedly kind of crazy, you know what I mean? Like right. Like Kobe was like, like that's a very specific type of person. Right. He is an exception to the rule, not the general like population. So again, zooming out, it's like, yes, you worked hard. Yes, I worked hard for my position, the things that I have for myself. But it is not, we can't calibrate simply on us, because I think that is unrealistic to expect that of the general population. And that,
and that is why, and I'm not trying to like do some type of like line in the sand, but what I am saying is like, that is why, like, hey, the reality is everybody can't be a doctor, everybody can't be the president of the United States, mm-hmm. everybody can't do whatever the thing is that you have to do. Not everyone is strong enough to be a roofer. Not everybody is in a position to do this. So in this space where everyone can buy a microphone and everyone has like Logic and Pro Tools and GarageBand on their phone, everyone has YouTube.
Yeah.
And everyone can upload the music to Spotify. That doesn't mean that everyone has all that they need to do to be able to make a sustainable living from their art. And I think that is just what it is. That's not even my opinion. This is what it is. And so like for me, back to the whole Spotify thing, is just that like for me, recognizing that philosophically helps me to like be like, okay, let me check in with myself. This is fucking hard. Do I love what I do that much that where I want to go through this and this and this and subject myself to this and this? And what does that mean for me? What do I get out of it? You know what I'm saying? Like, I've put, like, I had something I have to think about, and I think that's something that people don't think about.
Yeah.
So, and then
I agree.
And one more little thing about that. So then, not only is there's the whole Spotify thing, but then there's the gig economy situation where, like, I also have views on that, where people will be like, we're playing this gig, and, they're only paying musicians X amount of dollars. Well, to me, it depends on the case. But there's some cases where it's like, hey, this is a venue, they have their overhead and their business, and they're working together. Like, are you bringing in what you're worth to where a person would even want to work with you? So you're complaining about your gig and how you're not getting paid enough.
And look, this is okay. First of all, I think where we agree is that entering into business period, right? That is something that I think most artists don't really realize what they're saying or doing. and a big part of like what my startup is about, a big part of what I do is about like, listen, like understand what you're doing. Do you know about, ROI? Do you know about like return on investment? Do you understand what a profit and loss sheet is? Do you understand that you are going into business? Right? If you decide to do this full time, like understand what that really means. Also understand that, like statistically speaking, most businesses don't make money if they survive until 5 years later. Right? Like there's precedent for all these things, and it's regardless of the business, understand you're operating a business, and that is, I think, that is something that we have to take personal accountability for. Right. So there's that side of it. What I am saying is there's no netting. That is what I'm saying. It's like the way things are set up now, I think that there can be a lot of variance, But the way it's set up now is like there's just no bottom. You know, there's no end to the well. How
right.
deep we end up when we dedicate ourselves to this thing that I do believe is important and vital in our society.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to figure out, and I think that's things like Spotify do not add to, or rather they are adding to the problem. They're not doing anything, I think, effectively at least, to help prevent that.
Okay. I love everything you just said.
Right on.
Okay. I also think that music is, and art is like vital to society and things like that. But I think that where we differ, which I think is okay, is like the concept that like if I want to venture into this lifestyle, I'm going to call it lifestyle. I'm not even going to call it a job.
Right.
Like there is no safety net that comes with that job. So you have to do that for yourself if you want to enter into this world.
Right.
And it is happening. People are doing it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in one way or the other. One person might do it by having a side job.
Yeah.
One person might do it by like taking bullshit gigs that they don't really like to do to keep the business running, but then do their own art on the side. Some people hustle their way with their own art until their own art can sustain them. Like I feel like there is no one way to do this, which also makes our career and our job very unique. It's not like being a doctor or a lawyer, this, that, where you go to the school, you learn this and then you go to this place and you put in an application and they say yes or no and then you get in. Art is not like that.
Yeah.
And I think that that's just part of the deal.
Listen, Philip Glass drove cabs for like 20 or 30 years.
Really?
Yeah, like while he already had accolades, like
really?
He was already, but he that's what he did for his money, And so, I'm not saying there's a one size fits all, or necessarily there should be a one size fits all. But to frame this conversation again, this isn't about, it's the difference between a position on Spotify and a position on things as a whole. What I am arguing is that the average artist is not in the mindset or has the access, the information's out there, but we're not framed in a way where we understand that there are just better deals than others. So that's really what I'm saying. It's like looking on the balance sheet, Spotify versus a YouTube versus a Tidal versus a Patreon versus an OnlyFans versus like, and by the way, just if for those who don't know, there are a lot of people who don't do pornography on OnlyFans and make a lot of money doing like completely clean, wholesome content. But it requires that analysis too, right? Because I think what ends up happening is like maybe people will dismiss OnlyFans because they didn't do the research to understand the deal that they're taking. And that's what it being a business person is about. It's like, hold on, because people do the Super Bowl, that's an exposure gig. They don't get paid for it, but that still is a good deal from the perspective of many artists because that's a real exposure gig. That's why these exposure gigs are so fucking insulting. It's because they're like, oh, you'll get exposure to 10 people in my cafe. Fuck you. It's like if you're getting like, and so Spotify can make that claim. I will say that they do provide, in theory, the audience that can allow for you to reach, millions of people and stuff like that. Right. But I'm advocating for people to be detailed and thorough and intellectual about their choices, and I don't think that's what's happening. I agree. I'm not pro Spotify because from my perspective, personally, I'm like, that's a shitty deal. That's like, it's not a great deal.
I agree. You know what? I do agree with you, and I feel like in the scope of business, in the scope of anything, like this is nature. Nature is like, you put two animals in a cage and the stronger one is going to eat the other one. You know what I mean? That's just human nature. So the fact that Spotify, let's say that Spotify is on purpose predatory and they're just here, they're bloodsuckers. Let's say that, right? Cool. The deal comes across the table. Now, you're right. It is unfortunate that a lot of artists will just jump there because they want to get heard, blah, blah. That's why, to me, it's more important to educate artists about that than it is to say like, oh, because we are in a capitalist society and we are all also benefiting from it in some ways and we're not benefiting from it in other ways. Mm-hmm. So like they've made the decision to be like, hey, this is our deal, this is our platform, and we have to say yay or nay.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that really is a really strong point that people need to speak about more than just saying, look at these bad people who did this.
Yeah, I feel like, you know, what I think is regulation is important in any industry, because there's always someone who will exploit themselves, and we have to ask ourselves, like, well, what is the line for that? I think that the music industry has remained kind of a Wild West situation perpetually. So yeah, there's things that we need to do. Period. We're thrust in this situation if you choose it. So you got to do what you got to do. But then so it's not one, it's both. I think we need, I don't know if it's government regulation, but we need some sort of standard, from my standpoint, that will allow or prevent, rather, for certain people to like kind of scrape the bottom of people who will do anything because they're thirsty for validation, thirsty for fame, thirsty for whatever. And at the same time, artists need to be savvier. I wanted to alert you, if you don't know, there's a guy, an artist named LaRussell. Are you familiar with him? So he started getting huge, and he's a direct-to-consumer guy. His model, his business acumen, incredible. Really good artist, really dope rap artist. This dude put like, I don't know, in the span of, like, he puts out like 5 to 10 albums a year. It's like crazy. Like his like, he's on it. He's on it, and he's figured out his infrastructure, and he has like an incredible connection with his client base, and it's, you know, all this direct to consumer stuff. He has a fucking card that you can get for premium like features, and he has shows on a regular basis. He has access. It's like he's got it figured out. But you reminded me of what he was talking about, because I recommend anyone who's seeing this, like, go check him out and listen to some of his interviews, because, you know, like, Def Jam came to him like, oh, you're hot, let's do a deal. And he was just like, it's no hate, but it's just like, you gave me a standard deal and I'm not a standard artist.
Yeah, and it didn't make sense for him.
It didn't make sense for him. And we're not at that point generally where we're thinking on that level. And that's where we need to get to. It's like, does this make sense for me?
Yeah.
Is this fair to me? And then I'm also saying, like, you know, unfortunately, until we get to the point where that is like standard knowledge, then we need some sort of something in order to protect people.
I think that I figured out the middle ground way to wrap this, because based off what you said. So I think that you're right in the sense that, like, hey, like, over time as a society, we learn more about what we're doing collectively, and things shift. That's why the record deals that were there in like 1995 aren't a thing anymore. You know what I'm saying? Eventually, the way that Spotify runs, because there's enough people like you who are like pushing up against it, it's not going to be like that forever. And I think that's why it's important for you to talk about it and do your thing. Now, my yin yang part of that, which is not against your side, it's all saying, well, in the interim, like, for me, like, I have to do what I have to do for me, because, like, I have light bills, and I live in Brooklyn, and I have to pay the landlord, and I have to, like, live comfortably and blah 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 blah.
That's how they get
So like, for me, I'm like, cool, like that would be awesome if Spotify paid more money, but for the use of my time, it's more useful of my time to be like, okay, what can I do with this tool that's going to benefit me? And I think, just like you're saying, more people should think like that, in the same way that how that guy didn't take that deal. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But what I'm saying is, like, oh, this Spotify deal, oh, I'm going to take the deal because I know that I can leverage that. He didn't take that deal because he knew that it didn't make sense for him. So, like, my thing is, and I hope this puts it in the bubble, because I do like everything that you said. It's like, if you don't like the deal, you shouldn't take it. And if it's okay with you, figure out how to leverage it for yourself. And also, we need to recontextualize what this shit is, so that it can ultimately be better for everyone, and there's not someone who's like just raking in money at the top.
Yeah, I think, as a close, I guess, like, I think that, you know, monopolies are real. I think it's fine that Spotify exists. I would just advocate anybody who's listening to this, who's an artist, to like, like really understand how YouTube works, understand how Patreon works, understand how OnlyFans works. Check out even.biz. There's some things that have less market share, or less like, people are less familiar with, that offer a different kind of deal. So I would say do that, and I guess we'll have to talk about AI next time, because that what I will say to button things is like, that's why business acumen is important, right? Ultimately, we're talking about this paradigm, and where artists, I think, get stuck a lot of time is like, they're looking at how things are now, or sometimes kind of where they are like a year or two ago, because it takes a while for information to like disseminate and for people to be up to it. But things continually change faster and faster. Yeah. And AI is another thing that's like coming. So you can't, to your point, right? It's like, even if we did get regulation or oversight or some protection or something else, it's on you, right? Like, it's on me and it's on you to like look at the landscape. As business owners, right?
Not as musicians.
Right.
As musicians, we need to make the music that's most genuine to us in the best way possible. As business owners, we need to figure out how to leverage that,
right?
Which is the product. Because once we cross that line of music to music business, now that song that is your heart and soul, now you want to make a penny from it. Now it's a product. But one more thing that I do want to say about Spotify that is a positive thing for the people who are touring artists. The fact that, like, okay, somebody can discover your shit on there, and then your tour schedule is baked into it. People can hear, like, for example, somebody might listen to Ghost Note or Snarky Puppy or something like that. The next thing you know, a random John and Scales Forks song comes up, and they're like, oh, what's this? And then they click the button, and it's like, oh, he's going to be in Brooklyn on June 19th.
They got features, bro.
You know what I'm saying?
Not gonna and then it's like that they got features.
And I'm saying, like, you just, you know what I'm saying? And I'm saying that, like, that's why, going back to what you're saying, is it working for you or is it not working for you? And if it's not working for you, then you have to figure out what works for you.
Yeah, definitely.
Spotify works for me.
Yeah, I'm not shaming your Spotify practice.
And I'm not shaming
anyone else's.
Anti, like, I'm all about it. Like, I love the game. The game of, like, we're here in life and we have to figure out how to fucking survive. Like, I don't know if it's weird or not, but, like, I love it. I'm like, all right, how do we make this happen? Like, and I feel like a lot of people want it to be easy. I don't think you want it to be easy. I'm not saying that, but I feel like some of these artists, they're like, man, I made a song, like, where's the money?
What's up? Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And that's what I'm like, man, come on.
Yeah, I might even say another good piece of advice would be, bring that same level of creativity to your business. Yeah. Like, I think a lot of artists don't understand how much creativity and an improvisational nature, like, which, by the way, I think improvisation ultimately is adaptation at its core. And the better you're able to adapt, the better you're able to, like, look at the scenario in life, not just on your instrument or whatever you're doing, whether you're freestyling or, playing or whatever. You're able to, like, make creative choices, and that's what gets you ahead. That's what allows you.
That's how I'm here.
Right.
That's how I'm here. And I'm gonna be honest, like, one of the first experiences I had is, like, right after college. There was a country girl. It was a female country band called Cowboy Crush, and this is random, but I was working a job as, like, backstage theater crew or whatever, and this female country band came in, and I met one of the girls, and I was, like, so, like, enthralled that, like, these people were, like, they were touring and they were traveling, they were making music. And so I sat with her as a worker who's, like, loading in their gear, asking her questions, and she was like, you want to make sure that you are taking care of just as much of the music as you are with the business. So, like, she gave me some books at the time. The book she told me about was I Don't Need a Record Deal. There's a book called I Don't Need a Record Deal. It's really obsolete at this point. You know what I mean? Right. And then there's a book called The Indie Bible. So she told me about the Indie Bible and I Don't Need a Record Deal, and I was like, all right. And also make sure that I focus on music, or on music and the business. So when I graduated from college and then started my music life in Asheville, one of the first things I did was like, okay, this is my office. I set aside a place where like this is where I sit and I like type emails and I make plans and I look at the calendar and all that. And then this is where I practice and I write, and I had that mind state since the beginning. And I do feel lucky in that sense that like someone gave me that knowledge to like, hey man, like be thinking about this. So hopefully people will watch this and take stuff from us.
Yeah, man. Yeah, don't be entitled. It can even be fun. I think that's like the business creative side.
Yeah.
They're both creative sides, I guess that's what I'm saying. And in a way, that's what's cool. As artists, we're people who live in that creative space, and we can bring that energy to everything we're doing.
It's a perfect closer. Zaven.
Thanks for having me, bro.
We didn't punch each other in the face.
Yeah, no. Whoa, what should I have been? Like, should I have been like armored up? I didn't know. That's what
I was ready. I was like, yo,
ready to,
yo, Spotify.
Yeah, Team Spotify all day. Wow. All right, bro. Appreciate you.
All right. Boom.
That was great.
Yeah, that was fun, man.